I'd like to thank our reader, Gloria Nye, for the wonderful reading. She's always so articulate. And thanks also to Karen Drucker and our CSL music team for our beautiful music today. Today, we continue our wonderful 2023 spiritual journey and our series on life, love, and the pursuit of happiness, according to the boy, the mole, the fox, and the horse. And we are exploring self-care. This is already week 10 of our journey. And like the boy, the mole, the fox, and the horse, we still have plenty of time to discover who we are, what has meaning to us, where our home lies. And I remind you that each week is independent. And this week, you walk away with some tools that you might use to delve deeper into understanding your life, what brings you joy, and how to love and take better care of you. So before I turn it over to Reverend Catherine, here's your question for the week. What is the one choice you might make today to make self-care a priority? To know we are each perfect in our imperfections, and to remember, self-care is a way of honoring the divine within us. One more time. What is the one choice you might make today to make self-care a priority? To know we are each perfect in our imperfections, and to remember, self-care is a way of honoring the divine within us.
Good morning, my friends. What a joy it is to be with you again this morning. Let's start with a story, shall we? There was once a man who worked on a construction site who took his lunch with his coworkers. He sat down on a picnic table and he opened his lunchbox and said, "Oh no, a cheese sandwich? I hate cheese sandwiches." Well, the next day, same thing. He opened his lunchbox. "Another cheese sandwich? Oh my gosh, I hate cheese sandwiches." And the third day, cheese sandwich again. "What do I have to do to not have a cheese sandwich?" And one of his coworkers said to him, "Why don't you just tell your wife that you don't like cheese sandwiches?" And the guy looked at his coworker and said, "Wife? I don't have a wife." So my question to you is, how often do we complain about patterns in our life that we weave with our own two hands? How easy it is to forget one of the basic principles of our teaching, that we create our own reality. We create our experiences. Today, we're talking about self-care and being kinder to ourselves. As we continue our deep dive into this wonderful little book, The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, we see the boy, the fox, and the mole walking at night. And the mole says, "Being kind to yourself is one of the greatest kindnesses." Well, I'm certain that I'm not the only one who has high expectations of myself, and I'm sometimes are too critical, too hard on myself. But if you're like me, you sometimes put yourself and your needs on the back burner, wanting to be a good friend, a good parent, or a good partner. Here's the thing though, we can't give from an empty cup. We have to give from an overflowing place, from a place of fullness. This is one of the main reasons why self-care is so important. One time when giving a talk, Wayne Dyer brought an orange with him to the stage, and he opened a conversation with a bright young fellow of about 11 who was sitting in the front row. "If I were going to squeeze this orange as hard as I could," said Wayne, "what do you think would come out?" The boy looked at him like he was crazy and said, "Juice, of course." "Do you think apple juice would come out?" asked Wayne. "No," said the boy. "What about grapefruit juice?" asked Wayne. "No," said the boy. "Well, what would come out?" "Orange juice, of course," the boy answered. "Why? Why, when you squeeze an orange, does orange juice come out?" Wayne asked. "Well, because it's an orange and that's what's inside," said the boy. Dyer nodded and addressed the audience. He said, Let's assume that this orange is you and that someone squeezes you. Someone puts pressure on you. Maybe they say something you don't like or something that offends you. And out of you comes anger, hatred, bitterness, fear. Why? Well, the answer, as our young friend told us, is because that's what's inside. It's one of the greatest lessons in life, Dyer said. It doesn't matter who does the squeezing, your mother, your father, your brother, your children's, your boss, the government. It doesn't matter. If someone says something about you that you don't like, what comes out of you is what's inside. And what's inside is up to you. It's your choice. That's a powerful lesson. You see, many of us are natural givers, and many of us allow other people's energy to drastically affect our lives, causing us to feel emotionally drained, mentally and physically exhausted, and spiritually depleted. When we get to that place where we no longer react with love, that should be an indication that something's wrong. Red flags. That is a time for balance. When what comes out of us is anything other than love, it's a message for us to remember self-care. When we make self-care a priority and let go of any guilt we might have around caring for ourselves, we're more rested, we're more calm, and we're more loving. The juice that comes out when we're squeezed will reflect those qualities. See, caring for yourself isn't selfish. Caring for yourself is your sacred responsibility. In the book, Let Your Life Speak, Parker Palmer says, self-care is never a selfish act. It's good stewardship. Anytime we give ourselves the care we require, we do it not only for ourselves, but for the many others whose lives we touch. So we all know what it's like to feel depleted. So now I want to ask you to think about this. Is feeling depleted a blessing? Before you say no, think about this for a minute. I've learned the hard way how important it is to turn challenges into opportunities. A Course in Miracles says that nothing happens to us. Everything happens for us. And that when something is uncomfortable, it's come up for us to heal. So there has to be something good in feeling depleted, right? It's a sign from our spirit within that something is going on. So there actually is a spiritual blessing in feeling depleted. There's a spiritual opportunity for us to see things differently and to turn our lives around in that moment. It's spirit within me saying, pay attention, pay attention. There's something here for you. Don't miss it. There's a metaphor I often share with classes that I teach. And it's because I love rocks. And I'll talk a little bit more about rocks later. But I love rocks. I love to go on the beach and collect rocks and find ones that just feel so wonderful in my hands. And there's a story here about rocks that I think you'll be able to relate to. You know, I believe that spirit throws pebbles at the window pane that is our lives. And those pebbles are little irritations. And they're really saying, pay attention, ping, ping, pay attention, ping, can I get your attention? Ping, ping, ping. And what happens is we just ignore it most of the time. And then what happens is a rock comes through that window pane that is our life, and we find ourselves sitting on the floor amidst a whole bunch of broken glass, wondering what happened. And so what we do then is we call a glass repair person and have them come over and give us a new window. But still, we don't deal with what happened. So eventually, a rock, a boulder, a giant rock, is going to fall right on our head. And that's because we didn't pay attention to those pebbles or the rocks. So what can we do to notice the pebbles and the rocks so that we can avoid the boulders? Well, we pay attention. We notice the discomfort. We see what's happening. We take a breath, stop for a moment and say, what do I need right now? And we turn our attention to self-care. Isn't it true that something inside you already knows what you need and what you need to do to take care of yourself? We all know what to do. We just don't do it. See, the evolution of our own spiritual care practice comes when we start to set intentions and to pay attention. Like I said, self-care is about filling your own cup first, because we can't give from an empty vessel. When we're feeling depleted and don't take care of ourselves, things can get pretty messy. There was once a cobbler who lived in a large village, and he was the only cobbler in town. So he was responsible for repairing the shoes and the boots of everybody else. But he didn't find the time to repair his own boots. At first, this wasn't much of a problem, but soon over time, his boots began to deteriorate and they started to fall apart. And while he worked feverishly on the boots of everyone else, his feet got blisters and he started to limp. His customers started to worry about him, but he reassured them that everything was all right. But after a few years, the cobbler's feet were so damaged and injured that he could no longer stand. He could no longer work because he was in so much pain. So no one's boots got repaired. As a consequence, he had to close his shop. And then the entire town started to limp. Everyone was in pain, all because the cobbler never took time to repair his own boots. See, what happens out there is directly correlated to what's happening in here, like squeezing that orange. Recognizing that you need care and then following through with it is an intentional way that we can love and honor ourselves. And that loving spirit that's within us, that's always here for us, always and in all ways. And if you really believe what we teach, and I think you do, otherwise you wouldn't be here this morning, then you know that the presence of God, joy, wisdom, peace, wholeness, and love lives and expresses itself in us, through us, and as us. So practicing self-care is really about honoring the presence of the divine in the moment and in each of us. It's funny how we know that God is omniscient, all-knowing, omnipotent, all-powerful, and omnipresent, always present. But we forget, some of us a lot more than others. But as we grow in spirit and forge a closer walk, we notice more, we remember more, we practice more, and we accept ourselves more, warts and all. Remember that story from the Wart King from a few weeks ago? See, we all have things about us that we think are less than perfect. The truth is, we're perfect, just the way we are, perfect in our imperfection. Exactly as we should be and exactly where we need to be. Whenever I talk to my mom and complain a little, she always says, take care of Catherine, she's precious. It's a reminder to me to take time amidst what seems to be chaotic for self-care. Because we all have our own journey, right? We don't know what other people are going through. Have you ever played that game when you see people on the street where you make up stories about what's going on in their lives and create a story about them? It adds a whole new dimension to people watching. I play a version of that by myself when my life feels a little messy. I take a moment and I look around and I notice individual people and I remind myself that that's God and that they have their own stuff that they're dealing with, just like I have my own stuff, that I don't know their troubles and they don't know mine. Then I go on to the next person I see and I remind myself again, that's God in form. They have their own problems, just like I have mine. I don't know what they're going through, just like they don't know what I'm going through. And usually by the time I've done that 3 or 4 times, I feel a little bit better about my own journey. It's like this page in our book where the boy is observing the swans on a lake. How do they look so perfect? The boy asks. There's a lot of frantic paddling going on beneath, answers the horse. You see, we never really know what other people are dealing with. And the truth is, despite how things might look, we all have our challenges. There are times when all of us are doing that frantic paddling. If it were easy, it wouldn't be called a challenge, and we wouldn't learn and grow from our experiences. Reverend Larry and I had a teacher in ministerial school by the name of Reverend Alice Bandy, who used to say that it's just as easy to learn from love and joy as it is from pain and struggle. None of us want to struggle. And I hope that as I continue on my own spiritual journey, that I learn more from love and joy, and I get to have less pain and less struggle in my life. In fact, it's my wish for all of you as well. So what are some things that we can do to facilitate that? Let's look once again at our book for some guidance. When asked about the 4 characters in the book, Charlie Mackesy said, all 4 characters represent different parts of the same person. The inquisitive boy, the mole who's enthusiastic but a bit greedy and likes cake, the fox who's been hurt, so he's withdrawn from life, slow to trust and wants to be a part of things, but cautious, and the horse who's the wisest bit, the deepest part of you, your soul. Can you see how you encompass all of those aspects? In this photograph, the boy asks the horse for some advice. Don't measure how valuable you are by the way you're treated, he replies. And then, always remember you matter. You're important and you are loved, and you bring to this world things that no one else can. You see, consciously reminding ourselves of these truths helps us stay in that place of love and joy and avoid the pain and suffering that life can sometimes present. It won't completely eliminate it, but it certainly does make it less. But it starts with a paradigm shift, and then it moves into the other areas of your life. That's what today is about. If you take nothing else from this, perhaps the awareness that you can shift your view, your vision. You can have a paradigm shift if you're willing to make one. And if I haven't yet built a strong enough case, here's some research. According to a study at the Whole Being Institute on Positive Psychology, people who thrive in life take care of themselves in 5 ways. First, they focus on cultivating spirituality in their lives by ensuring that they're leading meaningful lives, savoring the present in a mindful way. 2, they take care of their physical bodies, especially for the purpose of tapping into the connection between their mind and their bodies. 3, they're intentional about intellectual stimulation by engaging in deep learning and remaining open to new experiences. 4, they nurture constructive relationships, both with themselves and with others. And 5, they're not afraid of their emotions. They don't deny or suppress their feelings. They're mindful of them. They pay attention. See, self-care is how we demonstrate self-love. And self-love paves the way for us to evolve in all of those dimensions, physically, mentally, intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually. And it all starts in consciousness. But doesn't everything? It starts with making a conscious decision, an intention to be happy, to lead a fulfilled life, to notice when we get off track and correct our course. If you're a sailor, you'll understand this next quote. It is my all-time favorite Emerson quote. And it goes like this: "The voyage of the finest ship is the journey of 100 tacks." See, we notice and we correct course. As A Course in Miracles says, choose once again. It's that simple. Notice and choose once again. Then your life will be a journey of 100 or 1,000 tacks. continually bringing us back on course. Because you see, without awareness, it's almost impossible to ever reach our full potential. Without that, it's impossible for us to give our gifts, to fulfill our purpose here on earth. We're not here just to be. We're here to be love, to be the presence of God in a way that is uniquely ours. On page 56 in The Spiritual Universe in You, my buddy Ernie says, love alone shall reveal the self to the self and find enthroned in the high citadel of the secret place of God in our own heart that beneficence which embraces the whole world. When love's activity is no longer confined to the littleness that restricts, but extends to everything and everyone, then shall we hear its song sung throughout the circuits of our life. So by paying attention to what's inside when we get squeezed, we're noticing that littleness. We're letting go of that, and we're embracing love's activity within us. We're growing. Maya Angelou said, as you grow, you'll discover that you have two hands, one for helping yourself, the other for helping others. We're all evolving. We're all becoming. And as we do that, we see the value in being of service. But we really can't give our gifts in a meaningful way until we've got our own lives together. We have to do our work before we can be there for others. Self-care can look a lot of different ways, and it's unique to each of us. But if you ask Professor Google, it's face masks and massages. For you, it could look like a healthy meal, a walk in nature, a good cry, a nap, even asking for what we need and trusting that we'll get it. An empty lantern provides no light. I like to believe that every one of us is a lighthouse, allowing our light to shine so brightly that it can light the way for others. Self-care is the fuel that allows our light to shine vibrantly. Like I said, we can't nurture others from a dry well. If we practice preventive wellness, if we notice the pebbles that are thrown against the window of our lives before we hit empty, then we can replenish our reserves and we can give from a natural state of love and strength and abundance. Self-care is a starting point. It's not an end game. It's where we start our conscious growth and development. When we make it a spiritual priority, it becomes a practice, and then everything else in life gets better. Anne Lamott says, almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. So schedule time for your own nurturing, for your own self-care. Make it a practice. Find the time. You deserve it. And now I want to close with one more story about rocks, of course, because I love rocks. A little different story, but I think you'll understand it. It'll make some sense. A professor stood before his philosophy class on the first day of school, and he had some items in front of him on the podium. When the class began, he picked up a very large, empty mayonnaise jar. He put a large rock and a bunch of medium-sized stones into the jar, careful not to break the glass. And he asked the students if the jar was full. They nodded, and many said, yes, it's full. The professor then picked up a box of pebbles, and he poured the pebbles into a jar. He shook the jar lightly, and the pebbles rolled into the open areas between the rocks and the stones. He then asked the student again if the jar was full. They agreed it was full. Well, then the professor picked up a box of sand, and he poured the sand into the jar. And of course, the sand filled up all those nooks and crannies in between the rock, the stones, and the pebbles. And he asked once more if the jar was full. This time, the students knew it had to be full, so they responded with a unanimous, yes, it's full. The professor then produced a beer from under the table and poured the entire contents of the jar, effectively filling the empty space between the sand. The students all laughed. Now, said the professor as the laughter subsided, I want you to recognize that this jar represents your life. The big rock is you. The stones are the things that are the most important to you, your family, your children, your friends, and your passions. If everything else was lost and only these things remained, your life would still be pretty full. The pebbles are the other things that matter, like your job, your house, your car. And the sand, that's all the other things that round out your life. And the beer, well, that's just added enjoyment. That's just some fun. If you put the beer in the sand in the jar first, he told them, there's no room for the pebbles, the stones, and most importantly, the rock. Same goes for life. If you spend all your time and energy on the small stuff, you'll never have time or room for the things that are most important for you. Pay attention, he said, to the things that are critical to your happiness. I want to reiterate that. Take care of yourself. Pay attention to your spiritual, your mental, your emotional, your intellectual, and your physical well-being. Read something that stimulates your mind. Meditate, take a walk, go to the gym, get good sleep, eat well. Spend time with your children, your parents, your grandparents. Do something special with your significant other. Celebrate a friend's success. Maybe go on vacation. There'll always be time to clean the house or fix the broken garbage disposal. Take care of the big rock and the stones first, the things that really matter. Set priorities. And then everything else will fall into place because the rest is just sand and beer. This week, I want to invite you to pay attention to how you're caring for yourself. Make a decision to take time every day to be more kind and loving towards yourself. Think about how you can change your thinking and change your self-talk so that you can shift your perspective. Remind yourself that the most important relationship you have is with yourself, and that you have a special gift that you can give to the world that only you can give. Only you can't give it if you're not filled up. So next time you have an orange, squeeze it just a little bit and remember to take better care of yourself, no matter how things seem. So let's pray, shall we? Let's move to that place where God is, that place within where I touch the hem of the garment, where I know that God is and I am, where I know that I am one with the one, where I know that Spirit goes before me, making those crooked ways straight, and that life is perfect in all of its imperfections. Not only do I know this for myself, but I know this for each person here. I know that self-care is a way of honoring that divine within. It's a form of praise and worship. That we give from a full, overflowing cup, and how important it is to fill ourselves up by doing things that are kind and nurturing, by taking care of ourselves, by practicing self-care. So I know each person here finds time today and every day to care for themselves, to do things that are honoring and nurturing and fill their cup. How grateful I am for the many, many forms of spiritual practice, to be able to see all of life as a spiritual practice and to be able to use that as a way of filling my cup, to learn from every experience, to know that no matter how things look, God is right here. God is and I am. And so for each person here, may they all find time for self-care, for self-love. May each person here give from that place of fullness. And so it's with a grateful heart and so much love and appreciation for this community and for the opportunity to share some thoughts today, for each person's ability to find and make time for self-care that I release my word. I give it to Spirit, knowing that God always says yes. I call my word good because I know that it is, and so it is. Amen. Until next time, my friends.
Doesn't Reverend Catherine seem to keep outdoing herself? Wow, what beautiful stories and quotes. And you'll be happy to hear she has one more topic, so you'll see her again in September. And since she did such an inspiring, beautiful prayer, let us just take time to remind us of our affirmation for the week. Here it is. How is it I so willingly and effortlessly make self-care a priority? Know I am perfect in my imperfections. And remember, self-care is a way of honoring the divine within me. And your challenge for the week is to do one thing each day that falls in that category of self-care, even if it's as small as taking 5 minutes to yourself just to sit and breathe. I hope you're enjoying this series as much as I am. And if you feel like you've been inspired, please consider making a donation. I'm very grateful to those people who so diligently support us and contribute on a regular basis. And I would love for us to be able to start meeting in person again and still have our online services and continue to have special ministers and special music and our special events. Enjoy our offertory song.